to limit losses in this example, the ceding insurance company contracts a reinsurer under the following conditions. The reinsurer will charge a fixed monthly premium of $40,000. It will place a deductible of $100,000. In other words, the reinsurer will pay any excessive total monthly claims the ceding party incurs above $100,000. Let us insert this information into the model so that the insurance company can evaluate whether pursuing this stop-loss contract is a good business decision. 29. On cell C10, place a 1. This 1 will function as a binary trigger or switch. If the cell contains a 0, then the insurance clause will not be contracted. Otherwise, a 1 means that the reinsurance contract will take place. 30. On cell C11, write $40,000 for the monthly reinsurance premium. 31. On cell C12, write $100,000 for the monthly deductible amount. 32. On the P&L statement part, on cell F5, write the following function. Equals if, open parenthesis, C10 fixed equals 1, comma, C11, comma, 0, close parenthesis. This function will generate a reinsurance policy expense of $40,000 if reinsurance were to take place. 33. On cell F6, write the following formula. Equals if, open parenthesis, C10 equals 1, comma, if, open parenthesis, C15 is larger than C12 fixed, comma, C15 minus C12 fixed, comma, 0, close parenthesis, comma, 0, close parenthesis. This formula will calculate, in the case that the reinsurance contract takes place, the amount recovered on losses on behalf of the reinsurer above the $100,000 deductible limit. Otherwise, it will leave this cell in 0. 34. On cell F7, calculate net margin after reinsurance with the formula equals F4 minus F5 plus F6. In other words, profit is defined as net margin before reinsurance minus the cost of contracting the reinsurance plus any recoveries of losses above the deductible limit. 35. Still on cell F7, click on the Output Data button to declare the cell as an output, changing its name to net margin after reinsurance. 36. Making sure that cell C10 contains a 1. Proceed to start a simulation with 10,000 iterations. 37. Once the simulation has been performed with 10,000 iterations, regardless of whether you have saved the simulated results when asked, you can now take a look at the histogram of simulated results by hovering on cell F7, net margin after reinsurance, and clicking on the histogram chart, which should now look like this. Remember that if we were to run a simulation without the reinsurance clause, this is done by placing back again a 0 on cell C10 and running a simulation again. In this case, then, net margin after reinsurance curve would look like the following, with a loss tail extending well beyond $1 million. Observe that mean net margin has decreased from $65,000 before contracting the reinsurance to approximately $42,000. Therefore, if you were to make the decision based on averages, it would be clear that applying the reinsurance should be rejected by the fact that average profits decreased 36% or approximately $23,000. However, insurance decisions are rarely based on the means or averages, but rather on the tails of the distribution. Under the reinsurance option, the ceding company has covered its losses. With reinsurance, even though the probability of a loss is now slightly higher at 1% and the mean profit is slightly lower at $42,000, when compared to the mean uncovered profit position of $65,000, the company has been able to limit its potential losses. Under the uncovered position, its maximum simulated losses reached over $1 million, whereas under the reinsurer contract, maximum losses would only reach $25,000. Which only represents a 2% of potential losses. Another way to put it is to compare extreme percentiles. In this case, since we're talking about losses, consider percentile 5. 38. On parameters, change percentile value 1 to 0.05. When submitted, you will now be able to go to the histogram chart for cell F7, net margin after reinsurance, and observe respectively its P5 as opposed to its P20 it had before. The histogram will now display itself as follows. Remember that this last simulated position was without considering reinsurance. In this case, percentile 5 now shows a value of approximately $18,000 of losses. In other words, there's a 5% probability that the company might lose $18,000 or more, extending as much as over $1 million. After having placed a 1 on cell C10 and simulating once again, we obtain results with consideration of the reinsurance contract. Percentile 5 is now on the positive side at over $8,000. It means that there's only a 5% probability of having results between maximum losses of $21,000 to over moderate earnings of $8,000. Remember, the probability of a negative result is now only 1%. Another way to compare both scenarios with or without reinsurance is by using the S-curve chart. 39. Click on the S-curve chart icon and respectively select both outputs, net margin before insurance and net margin after insurance. DT Simulator will generate the following comparison of the two simulated curves. As you can see, net margin after reinsurance curve starts very close to zero, whereas without reinsurance, losses extend on the negative side of the y-axis. That is essentially what a reinsurance stop-loss contract does. It limits the loss exposure of an insurance issuer. Even though the company stands here to gain less on average, it has limited the potential losses on the cumulative left-hand side of this chart on negative earnings.